I never imagined that a cheap bottle of red wine would be the catalyst for my awakening. However, here we are. It began rather casually, as is customary on Saturdays. My 42-year married husband James and I had gone to the grocery shop. Even after we moved in with our daughter Rachel, her husband David, and our grandson Owen, it remained our one small tradition. We just intended to stay until things settled down, as Rachel described it. 4 years have passed since then. In any case, it was the anniversary of our marriage. 42 years. It's worth a little toast, but not exactly diamond jubilee. I could see James's gaze resting on a vintage bottle, one of those small batch bottles he used to adore, as we stood in front of a red wine display. I didn't even hold out. After picking it up and placing it in the basket, I wished the couple a happy anniversary. James grinned as though he had suddenly regained some of his former personality, and I felt warm for a second, as though we might still have some of who we are, even in this house where we have to be careful. After arriving home, we made dinner nothing special. We're going to have a peaceful evening together, just the two of us, and split that bottle. The front door then crashed open. David stumbled in, obviously intoxicated, smelling of whiskey or whatever expensive poison he'd been throwing back that evening. His gaze fell on the bottle as he entered the dining room. "You purchased this?" he muttered, gesturing to the wine as if it were a loaded firearm. James, who is always the mediator, gave a tense smile. "It was for sale. We just wanted to have a little celebration." A look of disgust distorted David's face. "You have no idea how much gas I could have bought with that cash. Do you consider $30 to be cheap?" Rachel materialized behind James like a vengeful ghost before he could reply. "Why didn't you speak to me first, Dad? You are aware of the current financial crisis. Owen begins school the next year, and David's startup is having trouble. Every dollar matters." I turned to face James. He was pale now, hunched shoulders. The little smile he'd had a few hours before, lost. That expression I'd seen too often, humiliation, carefully wrapped in forced silence, took its place. And I broke in some way. I got up and pointed straight at David's wristwatch, the gaudy investment piece he had boasted about at Christmas the previous year. "That timepiece you're sporting? $600. What about your wife's handbag?" I looked across at Rachel. "The one who designed it?" "That's 5 more. Both of them blinked. I was shocked that I had the audacity to speak it aloud, not by what I said. I responded in a firm but trembling voice. "You two preach about saving money like it's a religion. In retirement, James and I receive close to $7,000 per month. Our lives have been given up for this family, and we can't even sip a glass of wine these days without being embarrassed about it." David attempted to interrupt. "That's not the same." "It is, of course," I yelled. "When you spend money, things are different. Your pleasures are necessities, but when do we indulge? It's a waste, opulent, disgraceful." Rachel scowled. "You don't understand, Mom," I replied. "No, you don't understand. For years, we have been housekeepers, babysitters, caregivers, and silent donors to all of the bills. To assist you, we relocated. Should avoid being regarded as freeloaders." They stopped talking after that, for roughly 10 seconds. All this time, Owen, my dear Owen, had begun to weep. What a poor child. In an attempt to calm him, James grabbed him up and whispered, "Let's not fight. There is only a bottle of wine. I'll give it back tomorrow." "No," I replied icily. "We are no longer requesting permission to live." I then gave Rachel a direct look. "Go earn money if you want it. Don't call it love after taking advantage of your parents." I guided James back to our room by holding his hand. The wine? We didn't drink it. The following morning, James shared it with the neighbors. It ought to have ended there. Naturally, though, they freaked out when we at last defended ourselves. The following morning, the apology arrived. They did, of course. When David arrived at our bedroom door, he appeared to have been struck by a truck. Hair is a disaster. Bloodshot eyes. "I was intoxicated," he whispered. "Said a number of foolish things. I feel terrible." He then gave himself a real slap. Twice. Like the previous night would be erased by some sort of self-flagellation. Holding 2 coffee mugs and wearing a fake, guilty expression, Rachel trailed behind him. She said that everything was fine because we both had some wine last night too. We didn't intend to be so severe. Please don't take it personally, Dad or Mom. I simply gazed at them. Their grins were too pristine. They sounded too prepared. Before entering, it seemed as though they had practiced this identical play in the mirror. I didn't respond at all. I simply turned my face toward the window and gave them a chilly little laugh. Rachel gave James a look that suggested she wanted him to act as a mediator. As usual, with a sigh, he stretched over and gave me a shoulder rub. Emily, we are family. Let's not harbor resentment. Suddenly, the tension began to ease, at least for him. Rachel pounced when she saw her opening. We haven't all gone out in a long time. Why don't we go for a quick stroll and breathe some fresh air? Today is our day off. I had no desire to. James, though, he constantly uses patience and duct tape to try to keep the family together. So, in an effort to maintain harmony, I nodded. We had no intention of purchasing anything, just a walk in the city center. But then I discovered it, a tiny store selling vintage apparel that I had never seen before. A white garment with delicate blue flower patterns is right in the window, just like me. The type one wore prior to our move here, prior to my role as the babysitter, the chef, the quiet one. James grinned when he saw me observing. Go ahead, he said. Let's look at it. Entering the store seemed like entering a bygone era. Soft music, old lace curtains, let in some sunlight. And that dress, which seemed to be waiting for me, was hanging in the middle of the room. I approached and brushed the cloth with my hand. It was breezy and delicate, feminine. It was something I hadn't worn in years. When I donned a flowered blouse, I can still hear David's scornful voice. What are you trying to show? Acting like you're on vacation? I stopped wearing them after that. Ceased wearing anything that reminded me of myself. I paused. James didn't. Is it possible for you to assist my wife in determining her size? He questioned the store clerk, who appeared to be from an old movie and was perhaps 25 years old. She had such a brilliant smile that I felt shy. She remarked sweetly, "Every age has its charm. You would look stunning in this dress." Despite my lack of faith in her, I tried it on. I slipped into it in the dressing room, as if I were peeling off a layer of skin. James's face brightened, as if he had seen me for the first time in years when I went outside. You look stunning, he remarked. As simple as that, without hesitation. For the first time in ages, I didn't see someone's mother, cook, or live-in grandfather when I looked in the mirror. A woman I used to know was there, a tasteful one with a viewpoint, a spined one. Naturally, though, the moment was short-lived. David and Rachel entered, arms stuffed with shopping bags from upscale retailers. Rachel was the first to notice me and her smile froze. At your age, Mom? Don't you think that clothing is a little too much? She spoke in a light, informal tone. But there was a strong undertone. James chuckled. Not a joyful chuckle. Rachel, what precisely is the issue? The cost or the fashion? He gestured toward their suitcases. Spending hundreds, if not thousands, on yourselves is not a problem for you two. But after your mom purchases a single garment, everything goes wrong? Rachel struggled to regain her lovely appearance. I didn't intend it that way, Mom. You're 65. I simply believe that something more straightforward might be more elegant. She indicated the window. Examine your surroundings. Everybody is dressed comfortably. That outfit isn't useful because you're constantly chasing after Owen and cooking. Additionally, that haircut isn't appropriate. That final section? That struck like a blow. James's mouth clenched. Are you curious as to why she chopped off her hair? He was struggling to remain composed, as I could tell. She wore it for a long time. Always. However, Owen continued to grasp it, pulling so forcefully that she would recoil. You showed no concern. You held her accountable. She then interrupted it. For him. For you. Quiet. The clerk made an effort to make things more amicable. In actuality, short hair is very elegant. It looks well with retro fashions. It demonstrates character. Rachel gave a sardonic laugh. You would say that, of course. Your goal is to close a deal. Then, all sugar again. She turned back to me. Some lovely, basic outfits are available in a store down the street. Also, less expensive. You might fit in better with that style. In response, David said, Really? It's a waste to spend this much money on a dress. It's better to purchase something valuable, similar to an aging whiskey bottle, or cigars. It dawned on me then. The wine wasn't the point, or the gown. It wasn't. Anything we spent on ourselves seemed wasteful to them. It wasn't logical until the money came to them. I slipped back into the dressing room and put on my old, boring gray dress while James was still fighting. Rachel always referred to it as practical. That brightness in my face, the one I saw in the mirror, was gone when I emerged. James caught sight of it. His expression dropped. He then gave our savings card to the clerk after taking it out of his wallet. He declared, "We'll take the dress, and a couple more in her proportions. Anything she want." The color left Rachel's face. Silently and steadily, I grasped James's hand, and we left the store without turning around. On the way home, neither of us said anything. The city lights were smearing on the glass as we gazed out the window. However, something had begun to change within me, silently, indefinitely. We didn't handle the new dresses that evening. They were still hidden away in the room's corner, folded neatly in the shopping bag. During dinner, James remained silent. I didn't either. Owen sat across from us, half watching cartoons on his tablet while picking at his dinner. It was too quiet in the house. They claimed to have had a networking dinner after Rachel and David went out once more. I ceased monitoring their networking. James's eyes were far away as he swirled soup in his bowl. After we left the store, I finally uttered what had been on my mind. "Let's head home." He raised his head as if I had spoken a foreign language. My voice was lower this time as I said, "Our real home. The one we abandoned, prior to all of this." He took a while to respond. I understood why. Since the house had been vacant for more than 10 years, his mind was most likely racing in the same direction as mine. It would require effort. We would require funds. Even worse, Rachel would never be able to forgive us. However, I had had enough of waiting for approval to live. At that moment, Owen became alert. "Are you really going, Grandma?" I gave him a look. His expression brightened as if this were excellent news. "Perhaps," I answered cautiously. "Why?" "Because Grandpa Jay and Grandma Anna can move in after you leave," he remarked, bouncing a little. I blinked. "What are you saying?" He smiled as though he were revealing a playful secret. "Daddy said we can finally move into the large house close to my school once you move out. Grandma Anna and Grandpa Jay will be moving in here. They let me watch TV in bed and bring me Skittles and Pepsi." I simply gazed at him. He was grinning, completely innocent, merely restating what he had heard. I looked across at James. He had lost his smile. "They really adore me," Owen went on. "They said everything would improve once the elderly returned to their hometown." Elderly folks. And that's what we were. A barrier. Something to clear the path, I said. "Is your mother aware of this?" He answered without hesitation. "Yeah. Before the house sells, she will take you all sightseeing. You'll go live somewhere else after that." Seeing the sights, we didn't eat much that night. The TV was silently buzzing in the background while they sat in silence. David and Rachel were drunk when they got home, giggling over a client supper. The tension in the room went unnoticed by them. I had trouble falling asleep. Staring at the ceiling, I laid in bed. I turned over and turned to face James. "Remember what we used to discuss before we retired?" I muttered. Slowly, he nodded. I touched his temple with the gray. The idea, which had been simmering in the back of my mind since that clothing store, was then revealed to him as I leaned closer. His gaze expanded. Then he grinned. A small smile, just a knowing, quiet one. He then extended his hand and grasped my hand. The matter was resolved. Rachel and David essentially pushed us out a few weeks later. They were thrilled to learn that the old house had a buyer lined up. They said it would save time and insisted on letting us handle it personally. David even gave me a bank card. "As if everything were clear," he said. "Have the buyer wire the money here. We'll use it as a down payment for the new residence." We grinned, nodded, said everything correctly. After that, I threw the bank card in the trash when we arrived at the airport. We created a fresh account as soon as we landed. After that, we sent our retirement funds there. We met with the real estate agent that same afternoon, signed the paperwork, and sold the house. We hired a tiny cabin down south, far from the mall. 2 days later, close to a peaceful lake. sun that is warm, clean air, just tranquility. James's phone rang one evening as we were enjoying tea and grilled fish while sitting on the veranda. He did not look as he took it up. Rachel. Her voice was already shrill as she said, "Dad, 2 weeks have passed. Was the house a success?" "The new location will soon be lost. Additionally, your retirement funds did not arrive. What's happening?" After wiping his lips, James responded calmly, "That's right. I neglected to inform you. I'm going on a trip with your mom. We won't be returning." A long pause ensued. Then her voice returned, terrified and high-pitched. "What do you mean that you won't return? How about the house? The retirement fund? The educational institution? The loan? What on earth are we meant to do?" James didn't speak louder. He didn't. He declared, "We worked it out. You'll also need to." He hung up after that. Next, my phone came to life. I kept my thumb over the answer button while I gazed at the screen. I then turned to face James. He turned the phone face down gently. "Are we truly acting appropriately?" I inquired. I hardly spoke above a whisper. "What if she doesn't ever pardon us?" Taking my hand, James added, "Emily, we told ourselves for years that everything we had belonged to her, as she was the only child we had, since we cherished her. But consider this. Would she look after us in our hour of need if we handed her the house and the retirement funds?" I didn't respond. I didn't have to. "You are aware of the reality," he uttered quietly. "They would never have looked for us. All they wanted was what we had to offer." He was correct. They had no desire for parents. They were looking for investors. Free work. A safety net. We were finished. I combed my hair in the morning. I wore my favorite dress. I felt like a complete human again for the first time in years. All of that changed on that day. We had no intention of making a statement. We had no desire for vengeance. We simply departed, full with light. James's books, my camera, a few photo albums, and some clothes. We left everything else behind, like an old skin we no longer needed, including the appliances, the furnishings, and the life we had created under someone else's roof. Despite its small size, the bungalow we rented felt like home. The mornings were calm and slow. We would sit by the lake and listen to the birds while James brewed coffee, sometimes without even exchanging words, simply being there. And it was sufficient. When Rachel finally arrived at our house, it had been nearly 3 weeks since we vanished. We kept our whereabouts a secret from her, however. Common friends, phone records, and the internet. People will find you if they truly want to. She had changed appearance, swollen eyes, untidy hair in a bun. For Rachel, the fact that she hadn't even bothered to apply cosmetics was an indication of impending breakdown. "Mom, Dad, please." Like a kicked puppy, David hung back by the gate with her. Didn't speak. They didn't inquire about our well-being. The cottage was completely ignored by them. Rachel threw herself into it. She remarked, "We found another house. It's still decent despite being smaller and farther from the campus. We can work things out. However, the bank has 3 days to receive a down payment. We have a due date." It was there. The true cause of their visit. James remained still. He simply stood with his arms folded. He said, "I told you we're not coming back." Rachel attempted to dismiss it with humor. "Dad, hurry up. Don't act in this manner. We are related." "Exactly," he replied. "For this reason, we ought to be truthful. You don't want us to return. You're after our money." Rachel's expression grew stern. "You're interrupting us, so what? Following all that we have done for you?" "After everything we did for you, Rachel," I murmured calmly as I pushed the door open wider, "for a period of 5 years. And you were like a burden to us." She gave a head shake. "That isn't accurate." "It is," I said. "Even a bottle of wine couldn't be enjoyed without causing a financial crisis." She stopped talking after that. Softer this time, she tried again. "You looked stunning in that dress, Mom." "I mean it. I had no idea you enjoyed retro fashion. Had I would have," I interrupted her. "I can purchase a dress on my own if I like it. You don't have to provide your approval." She then used her final card. "Owen is missing you. Every night, he has been crying. He eats very little. He keeps asking for you. Mom, please, return home." And I winced for the first time since she appeared. Yes, I did miss Owen. I cherished that boy as if he were my own. However, I recalled his statement that he was thrilled to see us go, regarding the fact that Grandma Anna and Grandpa Jay were real grandparents. I assured him that he would be all right. Your family is now with you. You made a decision. She broke at that point. Tears fell quickly and untidily. She said, David's business collapsed. He obtained a loan in my name. Then he was discovered to have bought off a city official for a building contract. They are looking into him. There isn't any cash. No house is present. We might not even be able to pay the rent next month. James tensed up next to me. Now she was falling apart. I can't raise Owen by myself and work full time. David could end up in jail. I have no other people. James gave her a glance that was impossible to read. He remarked, You do have someone else. You have David's parents. You had plans to move them in already. They are incapable of caring for a child. She yelled. They were unaware of Owen's allergic reaction until he began to choke last week. I had to leave work quickly and head home. What if I didn't arrive in time? James did not recoil. Then perhaps you ought to have considered that before pushing us out of the picture. She twisted her face. You will simply allow your grandson to live with strangers then. Would you forsake your own blood? After a period of silence, I continued. Rachel, we didn't leave anyone behind. We just quit sacrificing ourselves. She gave me the impression that I had slapped her. James moved forward. For years, we gave up our time, money, and health. You didn't witness it. Instead of treating it as a gift, you regarded it as an expectation. And all of a sudden you know who we are now that the well has dried up. Rachel began to cry once more, but more subtly. Please, Mother, speak up. I gave her a look, glanced closely, and I finally saw her clearly for the first time, not as my daughter, not as someone I had to save, but as a mature woman who had made her own decisions. I remarked, You were raised by people who gave you everything, but we don't owe you our lives because of that. Sobbing, she turned aside and covered her mouth. She wasn't pursued by us. We simply shut the door. After that, there was silence. Too silent. Until we were discovered online. Nothing was posted by us. We didn't get in touch. One morning stroll at a time, we were simply going about our lives. However, our narrative ended up online somehow. It was created by Chris, a young content creator we met beside the lake. We occasionally saw him in the farmer's market, always curious and with a camera draped over his shoulder. He asked if he might film us one afternoon. He remarked, You two remind me what peace looks like. James shrugged and answered, Sure, but I still chuckled. A few weeks later, he shared a brief video of James helping me with a basket of vegetables, me wearing one of my old gowns, and us strolling by the lake. Not a story, not a drama, only little moments. The couple that chose themselves was the title. It spread like wildfire. Initially, the remarks were positive. People wrote comments like, They remind me of my grandparents, or This is the kind of love I want when I'm older. Then I was identified by someone from another video. It seems that a friend of Rachel's had recorded us at the fashion show months prior, where Rachel knelt down in front of me and pleaded. The tone shifted at that point. There were two camps on the internet. We were portrayed as ruthless by one side, selfish. Some referred to me as callous, while others claimed that we had the luxury of retirement and chosen vanity over family. Boomers who deserted their daughter and grandson. Others claimed that, rather than being a good grandma, I was trying to relive my youth. The opposing side, they comprehended. They were our age, individuals who had likewise been put to use, who, in the name of helping family, had been forced to work as unpaid maids, chefs, and babysitters' emotional punching bags. Basically, they were more subdued, but more truthful. My daughter still claims that I never did enough, even though I gave her everything. I can't even buy coffee without getting judged, and I've been living in my son's basement for 3 years. They didn't leave. At last, they got to their feet. James was concerned about me. He believed that I would be crushed by the response. But really, I felt calm. We had not requested attention. We had no intention of going viral. We weren't defined by that cheer or that indignation. Our lakeside mornings were unaffected. It didn't take away from the peaceful music James played as I read, or the sunsets we enjoyed from our porch. I did write something, though. Just one post. For my own sake only. We resided in our daughter's house for 5 years. Her son was raised with our assistance. Bills were paid. Prepared food. Remained silent. We celebrated our anniversary by purchasing a bottle of wine one day, $30. It started a series of charges against us, including that we were selfish, careless, and wasteful. All the while, they purchased expensive watches and designer bags with our retirement savings. We didn't leave to exact revenge on anyone. We took this action after realizing that love and sacrifice are not the same thing. Furthermore, entitlement is not the same as respect. I didn't think anything would change. However, it did. The sound started to change. The notion that parents owe their adult offspring everything began to be questioned. Giving till nothing is left is what that love is all about. That article? On it, Chris posted a comment. He wrote, "No one was abandoned by them. They only recently discovered how to defend themselves." When I read that, I started crying. Not the noisy sort, only silent weeping. The sort that seemed to be releasing something. Then there was silence once more, the way we like it. I still reside near the lake with James. We spend every Saturday in the market. He continues to make the coffee each morning. I resumed growing out my hair because I wanted to, not because it was fashionable or for other people. We travel occasionally, brief road trips, forest pathways, and coastal towns. James has a sketchbook with him. I have my camera with me. We don't post frequently. We don't have to. We now live by the straightforward principle that nothing belongs in our lives if it doesn't make us feel at peace. It has been more than a year since we last spoke with David and Rachel. Owen has not given a call. Perhaps he will one day, perhaps not. We still adore him. We always will. However, we no longer bind ourselves to individuals who only appear when they are in need. We've done enough. We now know that our life is entirely and silently ours as we wake up each day.